If you're the family ATM, watch what happened to me at 6:30 a.m. when I had 103 missed calls. My name is Madison, and this is the story of how I finally learned that sometimes the most expensive lesson is the one that sets you free. It started like every other family financial crisis. My phone buzzing at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday with a text from my mum. "Madison, honey, we need to talk about Christmas." I knew that tone. I'd been hearing it since I was 16 and got my first job at the local coffee shop. It's the tone that means someone needs money. And guess who's always been the designated family bank? I'm 28 now, work as a marketing manager for a mid-sized tech company, and I make decent money. Not rich by any means, but stable. Stable enough that I've become the go-to person whenever my family needs financial help. Car repairs for my brother Michael, emergency dental work for my sister Sarah. Mum's credit card debt when she went overboard on Black Friday shopping. Dad's new tools when his contracting business hit a rough patch. The pattern started when I was in college. I remember my sophomore year sitting in my dorm room studying for finals when my phone rang. It was Mom crying because they couldn't make the mortgage payment and were going to lose the house. I emptied my savings account that day, money I'd earned working double shifts at 2 part-time jobs. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself family comes first. I told myself they'd pay me back. They never did. But somehow I kept telling myself those same lies. Last Christmas was when I should have seen the writing on the wall. The family gathered at my parents' house for our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. I arrived fashionably on time, carrying homemade cookies and a bottle of wine, excited to see everyone after months of being too busy with work to visit regularly. When I walked through the front door, I found 17 people already deep in conversation around the dining room table. 17 people, every single family member, including cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends. They were laughing about something, some inside joke that had apparently been building all evening. My Aunt Linda was in the middle of a story about my cousin Jake's new girlfriend, and everyone was hanging on every word. Nobody looked up when I walked in. I stood there for a full 30 seconds, cookies getting heavy in my hands, waiting for someone to acknowledge my presence. Finally, my mum glanced over and said, "Oh, Madison, you're here. There's a chair in the kitchen if you want to join us." A chair in the kitchen. Like I was the hired help. I spent that entire Christmas Eve sitting slightly apart from everyone else, watching my family bond over shared memories that somehow never included me. They talked about the group chat they'd been using to coordinate who was bringing what food. They referenced conversations I'd never been part of. They made plans for New Year's Eve that nobody bothered to extend to me. When it came time for the gift exchange, I watched as everyone else exchanged thoughtful, personal presents. My brother Michael got a vintage vinyl record from our cousin Emma because she remembered he'd mentioned loving that particular band. My sister Sarah received a beautiful scarf from our aunt because she'd complained about being cold at last year's gathering. I got a generic gift card to Target from my parents and a "sorry, we didn't know what you'd like" shrug from my mum. That night I went home to my empty apartment and cried harder than I had since my college boyfriend broke up with me via text message. But just like with everything else, I pushed those feelings down and told myself I was being too sensitive. Family is complicated, I reasoned. People express love differently. The real kicker came 2 weeks later when I was scrolling through Facebook and saw photos from a family dinner that had happened the previous weekend. All the same faces from Christmas Eve gathered around my parents' table, celebrating my cousin's promotion at work. I stared at those photos for 20 minutes, trying to figure out if I'd somehow missed an invitation or forgotten about the event. Finally, I called my mum. "Oh, that was just a small get-together," she said when I asked about it. "Nothing special, just close family." Close family. I was their daughter, their sister, their cousin. But somehow I wasn't close family. That's when the pattern really became clear to me. I started paying attention to the group texts, the casual mentions of gatherings I hadn't been invited to, the inside jokes I wasn't part of. I realised that somewhere along the way, I'd been relegated from family member to family resource. I was the person they called when they needed money, but not the person they thought to include when they were making memories. For months after that realization, I tried to change things. I initiated plans, suggested family dinners, offered to host gatherings at my place. The response was always lukewarm at best. "That sounds nice, honey, but we already have plans." Or "maybe next time." Or "my personal favourite, we'll let you know." They never let me know. By the time November rolled around this year, I'd resigned myself to another lonely Christmas. I was actually looking forward to it in a weird way. I'd made plans to volunteer at the local shelter on Christmas morning and had booked myself a spa day for Christmas Eve. For the first time in years, I was going to have a Christmas that was entirely my own. Then my phone rang at 9 p.m. on that Tuesday night in mid-November. "Madison, honey, we need to talk about Christmas." Mum's voice had that particular tone that I'd learned to associate with expensive conversations. I was sitting on my couch in my favourite pyjamas, a cup of tea getting cold on the coffee table, trying to decide what to watch on Netflix. It had been a good day. I'd closed a major client deal at work, had a great workout at the gym, and was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. "What about Christmas, Mum?" "Well, you know how the family has been talking about doing something special this year? Something really memorable?" I didn't know that, actually, because I hadn't been part of whatever conversations had led to this moment. But I made a non-committal sound and waited for her to continue. "We've decided to rent a big house in Colorado for Christmas week. You know, somewhere everyone can stay together, go skiing, have a real family Christmas. It'll be magical, Madison, just like when you kids were little. Except when I was little, Christmas meant fighting over who got to sleep on the couch because there were too many people in too small a space. It meant arguing about whose turn it was to do dishes and whose fault it was that we ran out of hot water. But I guess memory has a way of editing out the inconvenient parts. "That sounds nice," I said carefully. "How much is it?" "Well, that's the thing. It's expensive, really expensive. But we found this amazing place that sleeps 20 people, and it has a hot tub and a game room, and it's right on the slopes. It's $15,500 for the week." I nearly choked on my tea. $15,000? I know it sounds like a lot, but when you break it down per person, it's really quite reasonable. And think about it, Madison. This could be the trip that brings everyone back together. We haven't all been in the same place since your grandmother's funeral 3 years ago. There it was. The emotional manipulation wrapped in a pretty bow. I'd learned to recognise it over the years, but that didn't make it any less effective. The implication was clear. If I didn't agree to this, I was the one keeping the family apart. I was the one preventing healing and bonding and all those warm, fuzzy things that families are supposed to share. "Who's going?" I asked. Mum rattled off a list of names. My parents, obviously. My brother Michael and his wife Jessica, plus their 2 kids. My sister Sarah and her boyfriend David. My cousin Emma and her husband, plus their 3 kids. My aunt Linda and Uncle Bob. Family friends Mark and Patricia, who had been honorary family members for as long as I could remember, plus their teenage daughter. 17 people total. The same 17 people who had been at that Christmas Eve dinner where I sat in the kitchen chair. "And you want me to pay for all of it?" "Well, not all of it," Mum said quickly. "Everyone will chip in for food and activities. But you have the best credit score, and you're so good with planning and booking things. We thought you could handle the reservations, and then everyone could pay you back." Pay me back, like the mortgage payment, like Michael's car repairs, like Sarah's dental work. Like the 1,000 other times I'd been promised repayment that never materialised. "When is this supposed to happen?" I asked. "December 23rd through the 30th? Christmas week, like I said. Oh, Madison, it's going to be perfect. We're all so excited." All so excited. Which implied that this conversation wasn't the first discussion about this trip, which meant that once again plans had been made, decisions had been reached, and excitement had been building, all without anyone thinking to include me until they needed my money. "I need to think about it," I said. "Of course, honey, but don't think too long. We need to book soon if we want to get the good places." After I hung up, I sat on my couch, staring at my phone for a long time. $15,500. That was more than I spent on rent in a year. That was a down payment on a car. That was a vacation to Europe that I'd been dreaming about for 3 years, but hadn't taken because I kept lending money to family members. But it was also the chance to finally be part of the family Christmas that I'd been excluded from for years. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe being the person who made the trip possible would finally earn me a seat at the actual table instead of the kitchen chair. God, I was pathetic. I spent the next 2 days going back and forth. 1 minute I was convinced that I should say no, that I should finally stand up for myself and stop being the family ATM. The next minute I was imagining how grateful everyone would be, how included I'd feel, how this could be the Christmas that finally repaired all the damage from years of being overlooked. On Thursday evening, I made the decision. I called my mum back. "I'll do it," I said. "I'll book the trip." The relief in her voice was palpable. "Oh, Madison, thank you so much. You're the best. Everyone is going to be so happy. Just send me the details of what you want and I'll start looking for places." "Actually, honey, we already found the perfect place. Emma did some research and found this amazing house. I'll text you the link." Of course they had. Of course Emma had done the research. Of course they'd already made all the decisions and just needed me to be the one with the credit card. The link came through 5 minutes later, and I had to admit the house was stunning. A massive log cabin style home with 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and floor to ceiling windows overlooking the Rocky Mountains. It had a hot tub on the deck, a game room in the basement, and ski-in, ski-out access to one of Colorado's premier resorts. It also cost exactly $15,500 for the week, not including the cleaning fee, taxes, and security deposit. I spent Friday evening filling out rental applications and putting down deposits. The house required a 50% deposit up front, which meant $7,150 coming out of my checking account immediately. I also booked 4 rental cars for the trip, since 17 people wouldn't fit in the 2 family vehicles. That was another $2,800 for the week. By the time I was done, I'd spent over $10,000 on a family Christmas vacation that I wasn't even sure I wanted to go on. But I told myself it would be worth it. I told myself this was finally going to be the Christmas where I felt like part of the family. I should have known better. The first sign that things weren't going according to my hopes came on Saturday morning when I texted my mum to let her know that everything was booked and confirmed. "Wonderful," she replied. "Everyone is so excited. Michael is setting up a group chat to coordinate all the details." A group chat, perfect. Finally, I'd be included in the planning process. Finally, I'd be part of the conversations instead of hearing about them secondhand. Saturday passed, Sunday passed, Monday passed. No group chat invitation appeared on my phone. On Tuesday, I texted Michael directly. "Hey, Mum mentioned you were setting up a group chat for the Colorado trip. Can you add me?" His response came an hour later. "Oh, yeah, sure thing, I'll add you to the next one." The next one. How many group chats were there? Wednesday afternoon, I was sitting in a meeting when my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Sarah. It was a screenshot, clearly sent by accident, showing a conversation between her and our cousin Emma. The conversation was happening in a group chat called Christmas Squad. The screenshot showed Emma saying, "OMG, the house has a wine cellar. We should definitely take advantage of that." Sarah had replied, "Yes, and that hot tub is going to be perfect after skiing all day. I can't wait." Michael had added, "Just booked our ski lessons for the 24th. Anyone else want to join?" There were several other replies, all from family members, making plans and expressing excitement about various aspects of the trip. My heart sank as I realised what I was looking at. They did have a group chat. They were coordinating details and making plans and building anticipation for the trip. They just hadn't included me in it. I stared at that screenshot for the rest of my meeting, barely paying attention to the quarterly budget review that my boss was presenting. All I could think about was the fact that I had spent over $10,000 to book a vacation for people who couldn't even be bothered to include me in the group chat about it. When the meeting ended, I walked straight to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. For the first time in months, I let myself cry at work. Big, ugly, silent sobs that left my mascara streaked and my eyes red. I had done it again. I had let them use me. I had paid for the privilege of being excluded, and somehow I was surprised that it hurt. When I finally pulled myself together enough to return to my desk, I found another text from Sarah. This one wasn't a screenshot. "Oops, sorry about that last text. Meant to send that to Emma. Anyway, how are you?" How was I? I was the idiot who had just spent $10,000 to fund a vacation for people who didn't think to include me in basic planning conversations. I was the family member who was good enough to pay for things, but not good enough to be part of the Christmas Squad. I was done, but instead of saying any of that, I typed back, "I'm fine, thanks for asking." That evening, I did something I probably should have done months earlier. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I opened Instagram and scrolled through my family members' posts from the past few weeks. There were photos from dinners I hadn't been invited to, pictures from shopping trips I hadn't known about, videos from game nights that had happened at my parents' house while I was sitting at home, wondering why nobody ever called. The most painful discovery was a photo from the previous weekend showing my entire family at my brother's house for what the caption described as a pre-Christmas planning party. Everyone was there, everyone except me. They were literally having parties to plan the vacation that I was paying for, and I wasn't invited to the planning parties. I switched over to Facebook and found even more evidence of my exclusion. My cousin Emma had posted a poll asking the family to vote on activities for the Colorado trip. 23 people had voted. I wasn't one of them because I hadn't seen the poll, because I wasn't in the group where it was posted. That's when I realised that the Christmas Squad group chat wasn't just for this trip. It was an ongoing family communication that I had been systematically excluded from for who knows how long. They had been coordinating family life without me, making plans without me, building relationships without me, all while expecting me to be available whenever they needed financial help. I was the family outsider who they called when they needed a family bank. At 11 p.m. that night, I made a decision that I should have made years earlier. I opened my laptop and logged into my email account. I scrolled through until I found the confirmation emails from the house rental and the car rentals. Every single reservation was in my name. Every single payment had come from my accounts. Every single confirmation was sitting in my inbox, which meant I was the only person who could cancel them. I spent the next hour reading cancellation policies and calculating refund amounts. The house rental had a 48-hour cancellation policy with a 10% fee. The car rentals had a 24-hour policy with no fees if cancelled before noon the following day. If I cancelled everything immediately, I would get back $13,950 of the $15,500 I had spent. I would lose $1,550, but I would also free myself from funding a vacation for people who apparently couldn't stand to include me in a group chat. It was the most expensive lesson I'd ever considered paying for, but it was also potentially the most valuable. I stared at my laptop screen for another 20 minutes, cursor hovering over the cancellation buttons. Part of me still wanted to believe that this was all a misunderstanding. Part of me wanted to believe that I'd be included once the trip actually started, that being there would be enough to finally make me feel like part of the family. But I knew better. I'd been hoping for that feeling for years, and it had never come. I'd been waiting for them to see me as more than a convenient source of money, and they never had. I thought about that screenshot Sarah had accidentally sent me. I thought about the planning party I hadn't been invited to. I thought about the group chat that everyone was part of except me. I thought about 17 people making memories and inside jokes while I sat in another kitchen chair watching from the sidelines of my own family. And then I clicked cancel reservation. The house booking disappeared from my account immediately. Confirmation of cancellation appeared in my email within minutes. Refund of $8,550 would be processed within 5 to 7 business days. The car rentals took another 10 minutes to cancel. 4 separate reservations, 4 separate cancellations, 4 separate confirmation emails. Another $2,800 refunded. By midnight, I had undone thousands of dollars worth of Christmas vacation planning with a few clicks of my mouse. I turned off my laptop, put my phone on silent, and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept through the entire night without waking up. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. to my phone vibrating so violently it was bouncing across my nightstand. In my sleepy haze, I reached for it and saw a number that made my stomach drop. 103 missed calls. 103. The calls had started at 5:47 a.m. and hadn't stopped. My phone was still ringing as I held it, Michael's name flashing across the screen for what must have been the 15th time in the past hour. I let it go to voicemail and watched as the notification count climbed. 47 missed calls from Michael, 23 from Mom, 18 from Sarah, 15 from various other family members. My email was exploding too. Notification after notification of new messages with subject lines like urgent Colorado trip and call me now. And what did you do? I knew exactly what I had done. The question was whether I regretted it. My phone rang again. This time it was Mom, and something in my chest told me I needed to answer this one. Madison Elizabeth Thompson, what the hell have you done? I had never heard my mother use that tone of voice with me before. She sounded beyond angry. She sounded panicked, desperate, like I had just burned down the house with everyone inside it. Good morning to you too, Mom. Don't you dare take that tone with me. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any idea how many people you've just screwed over? I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. I cancelled reservations that I paid for with my own money. Reservations for a trip that I apparently wasn't important enough to be included in planning. What are you talking about? Of course you were included. You booked everything. I booked everything, Mummy Dad. I didn't plan anything. There's a difference, a pretty big difference actually. My phone was buzzing with incoming texts even as we spoke. I could see messages pouring in from the Christmas emergency group chat. Apparently, I was finally important enough to be added to a family group chat now that there was a crisis to manage. Madison, listen to me very carefully, Mum said, and her voice had shifted from angry to pleading. Whatever point you think you're making, you've made it. Now you need to fix this. You need to call the rental company and get our reservations back. No. The word came out so simply, so calmly, that I almost surprised myself. I had been saying yes to my family for so long that no felt foreign in my mouth. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, Mom, I'm not fixing this. I'm not calling anyone. I'm not rebooking anything. I cancelled those reservations because I realised I was paying $15,000 to be excluded from my own family vacation. You're being ridiculous. Nobody excluded you. Really? Then why wasn't I in the Christmas squad group chat? Why wasn't I invited to the planning party at Michael's house last weekend? Why did I have to find out about family discussions through Sarah's accidental screenshots? There was silence on the other end of the line. Long, heavy silence that told me everything I needed to know. That's what I thought, I said softly. My call waiting beeped. Michael was trying to call me again. I have to go, Mom. Michael's calling. Madison, wait. I hung up and answered Michael's call. What the fuck is wrong with you? His voice was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Do you know how many people were counting on this trip? Counting on me paying for this trip, you mean? We were going to pay you back. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. Like you paid me back for your car repairs, like Sarah paid me back for her dental work, like anyone has ever paid me back for anything. That's different, and you know it. How is it different, Michael? Because this isn't just about money. This is about family. This is about Christmas. You just ruined Christmas for 17 people, including 4 kids. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. The kids. My nephew Tyler, who was 8 and had been talking about learning to ski for months. My niece Emma, who was 6 and had been practicing her snow angel technique in the backyard. My cousin's children, who probably had no idea that their Christmas vacation had just evaporated because Aunt Madison had finally reached her breaking point. But then I thought about those same kids at last year's Christmas Eve dinner, laughing and playing with their parents and grandparents while I sat alone in the kitchen. I thought about the family photos where I was either missing entirely or awkwardly positioned on the edge, like an afterthought. I didn't ruin Christmas, Michael. You all did that years ago when you decided I was good enough to pay for things, but not good enough to actually be part of the family. You are part of the family. Am I? When was the last time any of you called me just to talk? When was the last time I was invited to something that didn't require my credit card? When was the last time anyone in this family treated me like a person instead of a bank account? Michael was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, less angry, more confused. Madison, what are you talking about? We love you. You love what I can do for you. There's a difference. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me about the Christmas squad group chat, Michael. Tell me about why I wasn't included in that. Another long pause. It wasn't supposed to be exclusive. We just needed to coordinate details. Details for a trip that I was paying for. Details that apparently didn't require any input from the person funding the entire vacation. We were going to add you. When? After everything was planned? After all the decisions were made? After I'd served my purpose as the family ATM? I was surprised by how calm I sounded. Inside, I felt like I was falling apart, but my voice was steady and clear. Maybe this was what standing up for yourself felt like. Look, Michael said, and I could hear him trying to shift into damage control mode. Maybe we screwed up the communication. Maybe we could have included you more in the planning. But that doesn't mean you should punish everyone else. The kids were so excited, Madison. Emma has been counting down the days. There it was again. The emotional manipulation. Make it about the kids. Make it about disappointing, innocent people. Make it about anything except the years of systematic exclusion that had led to this moment. The kids will have other Christmases, Michael. They'll survive not going skiing this year. But what about the money? What about everyone who was counting on this trip? What about Mom and Dad? They've been so excited about having everyone together. They can still have everyone together. They just can't have me pay for it. You know we can't afford to book something else this last minute. Everything decent is sold out or incredibly expensive. That sounds like a planning problem. Maybe next time you should include the person paying for the trip in the actual planning process. Michael was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost defeated. Madison, what do you want from us? What do we need to do to fix this? It was a good question. What did I want? For years, I'd wanted to feel included. I'd wanted to be invited to things. I'd wanted to be part of the group chats and the inside jokes and the spontaneous gatherings. I'd wanted my family to see me as more than a convenient source of money. But somewhere in the past 12 hours, I'd realised something important. I couldn't make them want to include me. I couldn't force them to value my presence. I couldn't buy my way into belonging. I want you to understand why I did this, I said finally. I want you to understand that I'm not your backup plan or your emergency fund or your last resort. I'm your sister, and I deserve to be treated like it. You are treated like, no, Michael, I'm not, and I'm done pretending otherwise. I hung up before he could respond. My phone immediately started ringing again, but I turned it face down on the nightstand and walked to the kitchen to make coffee. My hands were shaking as I measured out the grounds, but it felt like good shaking, the kind that comes after you finally said something that needed to be said. While the coffee brewed, I opened my laptop and checked my email. The cancellation confirmations were all there, along with dozens of increasingly frantic messages from family members. But there was one email that made me smile, a confirmation that my refunds were being processed. $13,950 would be back in my account within a week. I thought about what I could do with that money. I could book my own Christmas vacation. I could finally take that trip to Europe I'd been dreaming about. I could pay off my student loans. I could put it in savings and have a real emergency fund instead of being everyone else's emergency fund. For the first time in years, that money was going to be spent on me. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Madison, please, call me. We need to talk." Then another from my cousin Emma. "Can we please work this out? The kids are going to be devastated." Then one from my Aunt Linda. "I don't know what's going on, but surely we can fix this." I set my phone aside and poured my coffee. I had spent enough mornings dealing with family crises. Today, I was going to drink my coffee in peace and figure out what came next. By 10 a.m., my phone had accumulated another 37 missed calls and 62 text messages. I finally turned it off entirely and decided to go for a walk. The December air was crisp and clean, and the Christmas decorations in my neighbourhood looked cheerful and welcoming. Kids were playing in yards, building snowmen, and having snowball fights. Families were loading up cars with packages and Christmas trees. Everyone looked happy and excited about the approaching holiday. For the first time in years, I felt excited about Christmas too. Not because I was anticipating family gatherings or holiday traditions, but because I was finally free from them. Free from the stress of wondering whether I'd be included. Free from the anxiety of waiting for the next financial emergency. Free from the exhaustion of always giving without ever receiving. I walked for 2 hours, exploring parts of my neighbourhood that I'd never bothered to visit before. When I finally returned home, I felt calmer and more centred than I had in months. I turned my phone back on and immediately regretted it. The messages had multiplied exponentially. The Christmas emergency group chat alone had over 200 new messages. I scrolled through a few of them. Michael: "She's not answering anyone. This is insane." Mom: "I don't understand what happened. She seemed fine when we talked about the trip." Sarah: "Maybe if we all chip in, we can book something smaller." Emma: "Everything good is already booked. I've been calling places all morning." Dad: "How much money are we talking about to book something else?" Sarah: "At least 20k, maybe more since it's last minute." Michael: "Where are we supposed to get 20k in 2 weeks? Mom: "Maybe Madison will come to her senses and fix this." Emma: "What if she doesn't, Michael? Then we're screwed." I kept scrolling. The conversation went on for hours, cycling through anger, disbelief, blame, and increasingly desperate attempts to find alternative solutions. What struck me most was that in over 200 messages about a family crisis that I had allegedly created, not a single person had acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, I had valid reasons for what I'd done. Not one person had said, maybe we should have included her more. Not one person had said, maybe we took advantage of her generosity. Not one person had taken any responsibility for the years of exclusion that had led to this moment. Instead, I was the villain who had ruined Christmas. I was the selfish sister who had screwed over innocent family members. I was the problem that needed to be fixed. At 3 p.m, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents standing on my front step, looking tired and defeated. Mom was holding a tin of what looked like homemade cookies, her standard peace offering. I considered not answering. I was comfortable in my quiet apartment, safe from family drama and emotional manipulation. But I also knew that this conversation was inevitable and it might as well happen now. I opened the door. "Madison, sweetheart," Mum said immediately, stepping forward like she intended to hug me. I took a step back and she stopped, looking hurt. "We need to talk," Dad said. His voice was gentler than I'd expected, but there was steel underneath it. "This has gone too far." I let them in, but didn't offer them seats. We stood in my entryway like strangers, the tin of cookies forgotten in Mum's hands. "You've made your point," Dad continued. "We understand that you're upset about something, but you can't punish the whole family because of hurt feelings." Hurt feelings, as if years of systematic exclusion could be reduced to hurt feelings. "I'm not punishing anyone," I said calmly. "I simply decided not to fund a vacation for people who don't seem to want me around." "Of course we want you around," Mum said quickly. "You're our daughter. We love you. Do you? Because it doesn't feel like it." Mum looked genuinely confused. "Madison, what are you talking about? We've always included you in everything." "Have you, Mom? When was the last time you called me just to chat? When was the last time you invited me to dinner without needing me to pay for something? When was the last time I was part of a family conversation that didn't involve my credit card?" My parents exchanged a look that I recognised. It was the same look they'd given each other when I was 16 and had asked why I couldn't go to the family reunion that summer. The look that said, "How do we explain this without admitting the truth?" "That's not fair," Dad said finally. "We don't only call you when we need money. Don't you? When did you call me last, Dad? What was it about?" He was quiet for a long moment, thinking. The silence stretched out uncomfortably. "See?" I said softly. "You can't even remember the last time you called me about something other than money." "Well, you're always so busy with work," Mum said defensively. "We didn't want to bother you." "But you don't mind bothering me when you need $15,000 for a vacation?" "That's different," Dad said. "That was about family, about bringing everyone together. Everyone except me, apparently. I wasn't in the group chat, Dad. I wasn't invited to the planning meetings. I found out about family discussions through accidental screenshots. How exactly was I included in bringing everyone together?" More silence, more exchanged looks. "Maybe we could have communicated better," Mum said finally. "Maybe we should have kept you more in the loop, but that doesn't mean you should cancel the whole trip." "Why not? It's my money. Why shouldn't I get to decide how it's spent?" "Because it's not just about you." Dad's voice rose for the first time. "It's about the whole family. It's about keeping us all connected. You can't just think about yourself." I stared at him in disbelief. "I can't just think about myself. Dad, I've spent the last 10 years thinking about everyone but myself. I've been everyone's personal bank for a decade. When exactly am I allowed to think about myself?" "You know that's not what I meant, isn't it? Because it sounds like you're saying that my feelings don't matter as long as everyone else gets what they want." "Your feelings do matter, honey," Mum said, stepping forward again. "That's why we're here. We want to work this out. We want to fix whatever went wrong." "What went wrong is that I've spent years being treated like a family credit card instead of a family member. What went wrong is that I let it happen for so long that you all forgot I was a person with feelings." "We never forgot that," Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. Didn't you? When was the last time any of you asked how I was doing? When was the last time anyone seemed interested in my life outside of what I could provide for your lives? The question hung in the air between us. I could see them both thinking, both trying to come up with an answer that would contradict what I was saying. The fact that they had to think so hard about it told me everything I needed to know. Madison, Mum said finally, what do you want us to do? What will it take to fix this? It was the same question Michael had asked, and I still didn't have a good answer. What did I want? An apology? A promise to do better? A guarantee that things would change? Or did I want something bigger than that? Did I want to be free from the whole toxic dynamic entirely? I want you to leave, I said quietly. What? I want you to leave my apartment. I want you to go home and think about what I've said. Really think about it. Don't think about how to fix this crisis, or how to get your vacation back, or how to make me change my mind. Think about whether you can honestly say that you've treated me like a valued family member for the past 10 years. Madison? And when you've thought about it, when you've really examined how this family works and what my role in it has been, then we can talk. But not before. My parents stood there for another moment, clearly unsure whether I was serious. When I opened the front door and gestured toward it, they finally understood that I was. We love you, Madison, Mum said as she walked past me. Whatever you think, we do love you. I know you do, Mum, but love isn't just a feeling, it's also action. And your actions haven't matched your words for a very long time. After they left, I double-locked my door and sat down on my couch. My phone was buzzing again with new messages, but I ignored it. I had said what I needed to say, and now I needed to figure out what came next. For the first time in my adult life, Christmas was completely my own. No family obligations, no financial emergencies, no group chats or planning committees or last-minute crises to manage. Just me, my apartment, and the freedom to decide what I wanted to do with my holiday. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I opened my laptop and started browsing travel websites. If I moved quickly, I could still book a Christmas vacation for myself. Somewhere warm and peaceful, where nobody knew me and nobody needed anything from me. Somewhere I could figure out who I was when I wasn't being everyone else's solution to everything. My phone rang again. This time it was my best friend, Sarah, from college. Different Sarah, not my sister. I answered immediately. Hey girl, how are you surviving the pre-Christmas chaos? I started laughing, and once I started, I couldn't stop. I laughed until tears were streaming down my face, until my stomach hurt, until Sarah was demanding to know what was so funny. I think, I said when I finally caught my breath, I just gave myself the best Christmas present I've ever received. What's that? Freedom. And for the first time in years, I meant it.